Hey, what's going on? Shep here at Iron Anchor Cycles, and today we're going to talk about an upgrade for your Milwaukee 8 Harley-Davidson. And what we're doing here is we've obviously got some engine work going on, but that's not actually what we're going to talk about today. Today's topic is going to be a really nice add-on for any Milwaukee 8 bike, particularly one where you're making some more power and you need to have a little bit more control over the bike. And the product we're going to look at today is the slave cylinder from Rekluse. And what this is going to do is replace your factory slave cylinder, which lives under the transmission side cover, and it's going to give you a better connection to the motor, your drive line, and ultimately to the road. If you've ever ridden one of these bikes with a hydraulic clutch, you've definitely probably felt that there is something to be desired in the way that that clutch lever actuates compared to how it used to be with a cable-controlled clutch. Well, this is a pretty good solution to some of those symptoms, and hopefully will give you the experience you're looking for. We like this as an upgrade for any of the bikes that we do any motor work on. It's a pretty simple, easy add-on, and in the grand scheme of things, when you're talking about a motor build, really isn't a whole lot of money to get yourself a nice little upgrade. So let's take a look at what comes in the box, and then we'll throw this part on. So we've got, this is really simple, instructions, some padding, and then ultimately our slave cylinder is in here. And I'll get a little closer so you can take a look at what this looks like. There's going to be two things inside this bag. One is going to be plastic tube, and that's going to be to bleed this unit. We'll talk about that later. And the other is the unit itself. And you know, just like any upgraded part that you'd expect, this is a nice billet aluminum piece. You know, it's gonna look nice. It's got a nice weight to it, machined really nicely. So you know you're looking at a good quality piece there. But ultimately what this is gonna do is be a direct OE bolt-on replacement for the one that comes off. So you see it's got a seal here, which is important. And we've got our connection for the hydraulic line, and it's got a bleeder screw already attached. So basically what we're gonna do is pop the old one off, pop this one on, bleed it, and we'll be ready to go. So as you can see on the bike here, we've got a bunch of stuff out of the way because we're working on the motor. In your case, you really obviously don't need to do quite everything that we've done here. If you're just installing this particular part, really what you need to do is just get access to your transmission side cover. And that may mean just loosening your exhaust pipes to get them out of the way. It may mean taking them off entirely. If you're used to a cable-driven clutch where this side cover actually is the side cover to the transmission, and you remember that there's normally 6 bolts that live around here, you have to take the exhaust all the way off. On this one, because this is just a vanity cover and the guts are underneath, there's only 2 screws that hold this on. So it's conceivable that if you're able to just kind of drop your muffler out of the way, or your head pipe out of the way, I should say, you'd be able to get these bolts off and get this cover off. But in our case, everything's already off, so we're gonna proceed this way. So let me reposition the camera. We'll zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. We'll get this going, pop the old one off, get the new one on, and we'll be on our way. All right, so we're gonna start off by taking the outer cover off, and that is held on by 2 screws. Set that aside. And now we're looking at the OE slave cylinder. So again, as I mentioned, this is a different setup than what you'd see on a cable-driven clutch. This cover here is more like what you'd see on the side cover of an older bike without the slave cylinder on here, where you've got these screws holding it in, and there's a seal here and the transmission fluid's behind here. So suffice it to say that when we're doing this, all we're dealing with is the hydraulic fluid for the clutch. The transmission fluid stays intact. So our next step here is what we're gonna do is break this connection loose. You don't need to open the bleeder screw. This is just gonna stay on here. We don't need it. There's one already on the Rekluse unit. So we'll go ahead and open this connection up with a 7/16 wrench. And this is easier to do with it with this already attached. You see there was a little bit of force that was needed to get that off. Harder to do when this is off. So we'll let that go. We're letting this drip. We've got a catch pan under here to catch that hydraulic fluid. And then what we're gonna do is go ahead and take our screws off that hold the unit on. All right. and we'll then pull this away. And with that pulled away now, we can finish disconnecting the hydraulic line. And I'm trying to hold that hydraulic line up because we want to try and spill as little fluid out of it as possible. So we've got that out. You see our old seal, everything is here. We're gonna put this aside and we'll go ahead and get that new unit installed. Before we do that, I'm just gonna grab a rag here and clean this area up a little bit. So our next step here is to go ahead and take the new cylinder and we're gonna put the hydraulic line in and just finger tighten that. And I'm just gonna take a little bit of some of this oil here and just put it around the edge of this O-ring just to give it a little bit of an easier time getting into that bore. This seal is a little bit tighter than what comes on the original one. So the easiest way to do this is you're gonna start it off by getting it kind of centered in there. But what we're ultimately gonna do is use the screws to kind of evenly turn this in and seat it properly. Okay, so with those screws tighted, we're just gonna turn these in a little bit at a time so that that seal will go in evenly. So just want to make sure that our bushing here and clutch line are still in the same place they were initially, and it looks like we're okay there. So our next step is going to be to tighten this fitting. It looks like it's a little crooked here. So I just want to make sure that we're aligned. There we go. Okay, so we'll snug that up. And now our slave cylinder is installed. So our next step is going to be to simply bleed this the same way that you would bleed a brake. So we're not going to go ahead and bleed this now. I think that's probably something that's pretty straightforward that I think you should be able to do. Like I said, it's simply just attaching the included rubber hose that came with the kit onto the bleeder screw, and then just like you do a hydraulic caliper, build up some pressure, open this, let the bubbles come out, close it, release the handle, and keep doing that until you get no bubbles coming out. The reason we're not going to do it right now is because we want to be able to monitor the fluid level in the master cylinder for the clutch, which involves turning the handlebars, which we can't do because the bike is strapped down on the lift. So that's not something we're going to do now. So we'll bleed it later and then put this cover back on. But really, I just wanted you to be able to see that this is a super easy install for you to be able to do. Anybody should be able to do this, and it'll give you a really nice upgrade for either a stock or modified Milwaukee 8. So that's going to be it on the Rekluse clutch slave cylinder, and we'll see you next time.